Trace Baker, I approve I move approval of the October 28th meeting minutes.
Your second?
Janet George, I'll second.
Any discussion, any deletions, additions, corrections? All right, at this time, with none, let's bring it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Abstentions.
I'll abstain since I was not present.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
At this time, the meeting minutes of October 28th are approved. The next item is approval of the October 21st, the joint meeting.
Jim, sorry, like Ann, I was not at the meeting due to recusal on the issue, so I'll abstain as well.
All right. Thank you, Steve. So move to the October 21st, the joint meeting minutes, and ask for this time if there's a motion to approve.
This is Ann. I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Trace Baker, second.
Thank you. Any discussion, additions, corrections, deletions to the minutes? Being none, let's move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the October 21st minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign.
And this is Paula, and I was not at the meeting, so I abstain.
This is Jim Krug. I had a conflict of interest, so I will abstain from voting on that as well.
This is Heather. I wasn't at the meeting. I'll abstain.
All right. Thank you. The next item of business is election to select a new POSAC vice chair. Before we get into that discussion, just make a comment. I want to thank Jen, who has jumped in for me, but a lot of people don't know this, maybe currently, but also my predecessor, John, as chair. Jen was instrumental at times. John got called out of the country on an assignment and had to jump in. So many thanks to Jen for serving. Appreciate all her help to me. So with that, Jen is not, I want to emphasize that she's not leaving POSAC. She'd just like to step off the co-chair, vice chair position. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. Jen, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I've enjoyed my time, but my time is done to be vice chair. So I think it's good to have someone else step in and learn the ropes, because I am nearing the end of my terms.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. So at this time, this is sort of I'll ask for a self nomination, and then I'll be gladly second anybody who would like to do it. And of course, one of the perks of the job is you get free parking. You get free parking at the open space parking lots, and you can use the trails almost year round, sunrise to sunset. So on that basis, if anybody would like to come forward and nominate themselves, I will gladly second you.
May I nominate someone?
Please.
I would like to nominate Paula Fitzgerald.
I will second that motion. Any other nominations?
Unless you don't want it, Paula, then I won't.
Oh, that's fine.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the confidence.
Yes, I will second that motion as well, and we'll close the nominations at this time. All those in favor, as Paula as vice chair, say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Next item of business is public participation, items not on the agenda. Nick, do we have somebody who would like to speak to us this evening? Stephen, are you there?
I am. I'm here.
Hey, Stephen, good evening. Would you please introduce yourself with name and address, and ask you to keep it to about 5 minutes, and with about 30 seconds left, I'll give you the heads up.
Great,
Fair enough?
thank you. Stephen Todd, 99 Model T Road, Boulder, 80302. And my reason, and this is my first time joining you all, so I appreciate the opportunity. My reason for wanting to be part of this discussion is basically a question about why you have 3 agenda items listed, and the fourth obviously being the cropland policy, but we're informed that no comments can be made on that. And I'm concerned about transparency. I'm concerned about this issue, obviously, and feel very strongly on one side of the issue. And I did a little research on the issue of going back to at least 2011. There have been some very rigorous, stimulating, big time discussions on the issue. And it's not an easy one, but a decision, as we all know, was made in 2016 that's now perhaps going to be reversed. And it doesn't seem to me that the public has had adequate chance to know about this. It hasn't appeared in the newspapers. There were, I think, 14 or 15 days between the time the staff recommendation was made public until that comment period closed. Evidently, there's a comment period that's still open now until the 22nd. But I think this is too big of an issue to slip by somehow. And I'm not saying that's your intention, but that seems to be the condition that prevails. And it certainly gives the impression that this is something that you'd rather not have a whole lot of live and in-person public input on. And I find that disturbing. And that's my comment.
Thank you for coming out tonight, Stephen. Hey, Stephen, we usually don't engage with participants, but I want to, so you know, Phil, and I'm not going to, I don't want you to take this that I'm trying to be defensive, but we have had rigorous comments, well over 200, I think, written comments that were taken into consideration. We did have a joint public hearing, POSAC, the folks you see tonight on the panel, along with the county commissioners. It took about 6.5 hours worth of input. I think we've tried to get a lot of input. We're back. The item is back on tonight on the agenda. There's been an enormous amount of work done. I would encourage you, the open comments is still open. I would encourage you to, I appreciate what you said tonight. If you could put that in a form, please submit that comment, and it'll be considered as well. So, but I do not want you to have the impression that something was slipped under the rug or done in the dark. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Okay.
Okay.
Nick, is there somebody else who would like to speak to us tonight? All righty. Thank you. So the first staff presentation is the 2021 transfer management on the Roberts Thompson and the Valley Investments. And we have Tina with us this evening.
You do. I'm going to share my screen. Hang on
Hey,
one
Tina.
second. Hi,
Thank you.
everybody. This is, all right, Nick, do I have the wrong screen again? Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Tina Burkhart, Senior Land Officer. Tonight I am, hold on a second, go. I'm here tonight to present our staff proposal to transfer the management of 2.34 acres of property to Boulder County Public Works for the 120th Street Shoulders Reconstruction Project. The 4 affected open space properties lie on the east and west sides of 120th Street And 120th Street is the north-south yellow line on the map you see. This disposition is a result of road and safety improvements made to the shoulders of 120th Street by Boulder County Public Works. In order to complete these improvements, Public Works will need to take over permanent management from Parks and Open Space of approximately 2.34 total acres from the edges of these 4 open space properties. And again, on this close-in map, you can see 120th Street on the yellow line. Although both the road and the properties are owned by Boulder County, they're under different managing departments. And since both departments are part of the county, Public Works has proposed acre for acre swaps rather than dollar transfers for this. So Parks and Open Space is tracking these swaps on a balance sheet, and Public Works will later give Parks and Open Space land that it wants for open space. Parks and Open Space needs to follow specific procedures to dispose of these 2.34 acres, including newspaper notice and a 60-day waiting period following county commissioner approval. This notice included an invitation to attend and comment at this meeting. No comments have been received to date. So for the reasons that I've just stated, staff recommends that the permanent transfer of management to Public Works of the 2.34 acres as I have just described. And therefore, we are asking for a recommendation to the Boulder County Commissioners to approve this transfer of management.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina. We'll go open it up. Any questions for Tina about this? I have none. Anybody on the POSAC?
Trace Baker here. Tina, thank you for the presentation. You mentioned tracking swaps on a balance sheet, and Public will later give Parks and Open Space land it wants for open space. Has Parks and Open Space identified land that it does want?
Not yet. Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All righty. Any other questions? All right, at this time, the chair will, all right, is there any on-site, I'm sorry, we don't have on-site, any on, long day. How about any online comments? Thank you, Nick. This time, chair will entertain a motion on the acquisition or the transfer.
Paul Fitzgerald, I move to approve item 1A, 2A, sorry. I'm sorry, 4A.
Jen Archuleta, second.
As described by staff.
Jen Archuleta, second.
Thank you, Jen. Any further discussion? At this time, we'll bring the issue to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Any abstentions? Let the record show the motion carries. The next item of business is the 2021 access easement relinquishment. And again, we have Tina.
All right. Hi again. You guys got the right screen again?
Yeah, we're looking good.
Okay, good. Tina Burkhart, Senior Land Officer. My next item is our proposal to relinquish an existing access easement that provides access to the Barrett 2 open space property in exchange for an improved access along the to-be-built Park Ridge Avenue. The Barrett 2 property is located north of Highway 66 and just east of 287 and north of the parcel through which the current access easement is located. Boulder County acquired the 40-acre Barrett 2 open space property in 2002 along with this access easement. The access easement I'm talking about and the 31 acres south of Barrett 2 are depicted on this map, and the current access easement is shown as that red line. A developer intends to develop these 31 acres into an apartment community. So this developer approached Parks and Open Space in 2019 and requested the relinquishment of the access easement, since the easement's alignment runs right through the middle of the proposed development. In exchange for relinquishing the access easement, the developer will provide an improved access to the county via the new Park Ridge Avenue that will be built and a dedicated alternative access easement. The proposed alternate access easement is shown in yellow on this map. And on this slide here, the Barrett open space properties on the north here, and this is a depiction of this new road that they're going to build called Park Ridge Avenue, and then the easement will continue along to the east that way. The new access easement will provide the county better access to the Barrett 2 property, since Park Ridge Avenue will be a paved public road, and the remainder of the new access easement will be along a dedicated emergency access easement that leads directly to the county's access to the Barrett 2 property. The county will enter into an agreement with the developer that conditions the relinquishment of the existing access easement upon the completion of Park Ridge Avenue, granting the county the alternate access easement and developing physical access to the Barrett 2 property to the county's satisfaction. The resolution language creating the sales tax that was used to purchase the Barrett 2 property requires specific procedures be followed in order to relinquish the current access easement, including newspaper notice and a 60-day waiting period following county commissioner approval. This notice included an invitation to attend and comment at this meeting. No comments have been received to date. With that said, staff recommends approval of the relinquishment of the current access easement in exchange for an improved access easement to the county's Barrett 2 open space property. Therefore, tonight I am asking for a recommendation to the Boulder County Commissioners to approve the relinquishment of the access easement as I have just described. Question?
Thank you, Tina. Jim Krug, I have one question.
Yeah.
This is the skeptical engineer in me, but is the developer themselves not going to build the road?
They are.
They are?
Yeah.
They're not subbing it?
Boom. I don't know who's actually going to build the road. But Parks and Open Space won't relinquish that existing easement until a road is built.
Yeah, and is the county? The county transportation's in the loop on this, right?
No, that southern piece south of the Barrett 2 property has been annexed into Longmont.
Oh, is it? But it is Boulder County, right? Not Weld.
It is Boulder County, correct?
Yeah. Okay. Because the reason I say that is sometimes I've seen developers who decide they can build roads, and there is a certain art to it. And if they haven't done it a lot, then they get sideways with the state or the county transportation. So that was my only concern. So,
yeah, I don't know. I do know from our perspective, that road as proposed and as they've described to us needs to be there, physically there, and that our access has to be acceptable before we relinquish what we have.
Gotcha. Thank you. Other questions? Anyone? Any online, Nick, do we have any online public comments? Okay. With that, the chair will entertain a motion on the Barrett 2 property easement.
This is Trace Baker. I move that POSAC approve the Barrett 2 easement relinquishment as described by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other further discussion? With no further discussion, we'll bring the item to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Any abstentions? Let the record show that the Barrett 2 easement relinquishment has passed. Thank you, Tina, for coming out tonight.
Thanks, everyone.
Next item of business is the review of the proposed there's the Cropland policy amendments. And we have Cassandra back, or Mike, are you with us tonight?
I am. Yes.
We pushed her pretty hard last time.
Yes.
Jim, this is Steve Myrick. I want to indicate that I'm going to recuse myself on any vote on this issue.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
Good evening, POSAC. My name is Mike Foster. I'm the Agricultural Resources Division Manager, and I really want to acknowledge and thank Cassandra for filling in for me last month. I watched the video, and you put her through the ringer, and I think she did a fantastic job. But I just, again, want to acknowledge all the hard work that she's put into helping me and the department get this before you tonight. We're here to update you on the streamlining of the cropland policy based on direction we received from the commissioners on November 4th. As a reminder, this policy is really our handbook for how agricultural lands are managed, and our tenants are required to follow this policy as part of their lease agreements. One of the important things is having clarity in any policy so that everybody that's reading that document is clear on the intent and what outcomes we're looking for. It's also really important that the public understand what it is that we're trying to achieve and accomplish through the cropland policy. We have worked very, very hard over the last couple of weeks to clean up the document, to present the language in a way so that the policy intent is clear to the reader, as well as incorporating direction from the Board of County Commissioners on the topics of soil health, genetically engineered crops, and neonicotinoid pesticides. Real briefly, this is a kind of an overview summary of the cropland policy to date. We published our staff recommendations on October 1st of this year, at which point we was open for public review and comment. We held a joint Board of County Commissioners and POSAC meeting on the 19th, where we took approximately 6.5 hours of testimony, and we received at that point in time about 175 written comments. On November 4th, on October 28th, POSAC discussed and deliberated on this issue and ultimately supported all 4 staff recommendations. Those recommendations, along with staff recommendation and a summary of the public comments, were presented to the board on November 4th. At that point, some additional 30 comments had come in, so we were a little over 200 public comments that the board was considering at their November 4th meeting. During that time, the board did not formally vote on staff recommendations, but they gave us clear direction that they were supportive of the direction we were headed and wanted us to go back, make those edits to the cropland policy, which were published on November 8th. Again, we're opening that up for public comment. That public comment period closes at midnight on November 22nd. Based on the recommendation that comes out of POSAC this evening, along with any public comments and feedback that we get on November 22nd, staff will make revisions to the cropland policy and share that final revision with the board on December 1st for consideration at their December 7th public meeting. The scope of the changes to this policy fall into 3 key areas: soil health, genetically engineered crops, allowing the use of corn and sugar beets, as well as restricting the use of neonicotinoid pesticides, but allow them in a case-by-case basis in limited circumstances. As I mentioned, on November 8th, we posted our proposed red line versions from the 2012 cropland policy for public review. We also posted what we're calling a bridge document, which is showing the language that we're intending to change. So on the left-hand side, you have the original policy number, the original language in the 2012 version of the cropland policy. And then if we moved that language to the new section, that's noted there in the center column. And then if we made any changes to the cropland policy, that is noted as well. So we think that this hopefully provides a really clear and easy document for folks to review, kind of a side-by-side comparison of where we did make changes. There are a lot of areas where we made no changes to the cropland policy, but those where we are recommending changes, we have put that front and center. Our direction was to really surgically update this policy and how it's presented. As an example, on the left-hand side, the original 2012 version for livestock said read, livestock operations shall be encouraged as a management tool when and where appropriate and employed as a valuable management or rotational use for rebuilding soil health. There's a lot to unpack in that idea. And so we wanted to provide some clarity and restructure that in a way that we thought would make it a little bit more clear with the intent of that statement. And so as an example, we reworded this to read, livestock operations are recognized as a valuable tool in management programs such as strategic integrated pest management and soil health. Livestock operations shall be encouraged both as a rotational phase in diversified operations and as a primary agricultural operation on appropriate BC POS agricultural properties. Again, we're trying to make the intent clear from the original 2012 language and say it in a way that, again, is hopefully more clear and understandable for the public and most importantly for our farmers. As I had mentioned, one of the big components for that we received from the Board of County Commissioners was around soil health. Again, on the left-hand side is the 2012 version of the soil health. And we really wanted to emphasize that the soil health is principles-based. And it's important to highlight that this applies to all of our tenants, regardless of whether they're growing GE crops or organic crops. The cropland policy is a foundational tool for all of our agricultural tenants. This slide is very dense, and I have no expectation that you are to read this. This was provided to you in your packet, but again, it's meant as an example of the 2012 version of the cropland policy on genetically engineered crops. There's a lot to unpack in this. There's a lot of ideas and concepts that are sort of packaged together, sometimes in ways that appear to me misleading or conflicting. And so under the Board of County Commissioners' direction, we kept the intent of the 2012 policy, but streamlined the language so that it's a little bit more organized and better structured and more understandable. And so, well, again, this is the original 2012 version. This is our updated version in 2021, again, where we've reorganized the language to flow more logically and package similar concepts together. So it's a little bit easier to understand what we're trying to communicate to the public and to our farmers. This is the version that was published on November 8th of this year and was included in the packet that you all received in advance of this meeting. Since that time, we have received some additional feedback and had a chance to take a closer look at this document. And at the beginning of the 2021 version of the cropland policy, we referenced the scope that applies to Boulder County tenant farmers managing croplands. One of the revisions that we would like for you all to consider is to remove the 5-year review window. Part of the reason why we're recommending that is that the Board of County Commissioners have the authority to reopen and discuss the cropland policy at any point in time. And so since that tool is already available to the commissioners, we thought that this was a minor change and fairly redundant from a policy standpoint. Excuse me, within the section 3 of the GE section in the documents that you received is the approval process. And in the 2012 version of the cropland policy, there was a statement about not allowing GE crops to be grown for a period of at least 3 years in Boulder County after they were approved by the federal government. At that time, there was still, I think, some uncertainty around the safety of GE crops. We've now have approximately more than a decade of growing GE crops in Boulder County, and I think there's a really good track record of these GE crops being very, very safe. And so we think that this change, and that's the strike through that you see on this slide, is in broad alignment with the direction that we've received from the Board of County Commissioners. The last key component is around the neonicotinoid pesticides. Again, this is the staff language, suggested language that you all received in your packet and was published on November 8th for the public to review. I'm not going to read this. It's very lengthy. Again, based on some feedback that we received from Fair Farmer Group, we wanted to provide a revised language for POSAC consideration. All of the components that we had recommended in the November 8th language are still there. It's just reworded and reorganized in a different way to be a little bit more clear. We're still acknowledging that the farmers operating, first of all, neonics are still restricted with the exception of limited conditions on a case-by-case basis. And we're still acknowledging that those farmers that are operating under a Western Sugar Cooperative Agreement are permitted to plant sugar beet seeds that are coated with neonic seeds. So again, this is going to be part of the revised language that we're going to ask for your consideration this evening.
Hey, Mike, can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
The difference between those two, just in a quick glance, I want to make sure I understand. Is it only current tenant farmers who operate under the shareholder agreement? Or if there were new shareholder agreements, would this also apply to them? The old language doesn't look like it would. This looks like it would allow that.
Our intent is to keep this to the existing farmers that are using sugar beets. Our understanding that the market value for disposing of sugar beet shares is pretty depressed at this point. And so I think that the chances of somebody acquiring new sugar beet shares is pretty low.
I hear you. I guess I would feel a little more comfortable if we said something to the effect of tenant farmers who operate under existing shareholder agreements with Western Sugar Cooperative are excluded. I agree, while it's low chance right now of those shares moving around, I don't know what the future brings.
Okay.
Thanks.
So far, we've received 4 comments from the public. We've received 3 general comments and 1 specific comment. I would again like to thank every single person that has taken the time to provide us comments. I know this is a lot of work. There's a lot that's going on. And so I really do appreciate everybody's taking time out of their busy schedules to provide the thoughtful comments that they have. I want to remind POSAC that, as a general reminder, all of our leaseholders are required to abide by the cropland policy. It's in their lease agreements that they abide by the cropland policy, as it is our foundational document. There are a couple of public comments now that suggest that adding specific language that details what practices are specifically allowed, encouraged, or required, as well as those that are specifically prohibited. We believe that the cropland policy is currently written to address this feedback. One comment suggests including language for experimentation in the lease agreements. Again, we believe that these items are already included in the cropland policy and gives the farmers latitude within their leases to experiment with crop rotations and different types of crops, so long as it is in alignment with the cropland policy. So if a farmer wanted to experiment with growing a different type of tomato, that's well within the purview of the cropland policy and within their lease agreement. But if they wanted to experiment with a brand new technology, that's something that would have to first be approved by Boulder County before allowing that technology. Again, that framework and those guidelines are provided within the context of the cropland policy. So a brief summary of our recommendations. We're seeking approval of staff recommendations with the following additions. We want to remove the 5-year renewal of existing crops. We believe that we have a really good track record now of using GE crops, and we think the 5-year renewal is a relic that we can remove from the cropland policy. We also want to remove the 3-year waiting period in Boulder County after the GE crop variety is approved by the federal government. We believe that this will help our farmers be more adaptive to changes in market conditions and technology and innovation in the agricultural space. And last, we'd like to support the revised language to restrict use within an integrated pest management, but allows for exceptions on a case-by-case basis under those limited conditions. So the next steps following this evening's meeting, public comment will close on November 22nd. As I mentioned before, staff will package all of the public comment we've received to date, along with any recommendations from POSAC this evening. We will submit that to the Board of County Commissioners on December 1st for their consideration on December 7th. And with that, I'd like to
Thanks,
thank
Mike.
you for your time and open it up for questions.
Hey, Mike, can you, this is Jim Crew, can you flip back to your recommendations, 2 slides? Just so I did not listen in on the commissioners that day, but have they seen this? In other words, this isn't going to be new to them, right?
They have not seen these specific recommendations. They have seen the 4 staff recommendations around allowing the use of GE crops, so focus on soil health, the continued phase out of neonic. But these adjustments to our recommendations are based on some feedback that we have received in the last week since we published our recommendations on November 8th.
I guess what I'm getting at, Mike, is the out of the commissioners, out of you all's presentation in early this month to the commissioners, you drew from their feedback these recommendations, or these were recommendations made by the commissioners to you?
The 3 additions are based on public comments that we have received since publishing our recommendations on November 8th.
Okay.
So essentially we would like to amend the recommended edits that you have seen as of November 8th.
Yeah, I would just say this, Mike, from a board or an advisory group standpoint, I'm not a big one in, wordsmithing and getting down into that. I think we should stay sort of in a little bit of a helicopter view, and I would trust the staff would choose the right words. But I am concerned that, what direction you guys got from the commissioners to go forward. That is your sense that we are going to, for lack of a better term, come to some conclusion in December on the cropland policies? Is your comfort level that we get through this next round, we're sort of, dare I say, done with it?
I am confident that we have broad support from the commissioners to move in this direction.
Okay. All right. I'll open up to other POSAC members. Questions for Mike?
Paula Fitzgerald, I have some general and then some comments about the summary recommendations. And I will be first to admit that perhaps some of my general comments may well have been better presented at the 6-hour meeting back in October. And I apologize that I was not here for that. But if I can just quickly step through a few of those. One is, and this is referencing the 2012 numbering. I know some of them have moved to different sections, but section 1.13, it didn't seem to have anything relating to value-added production facilities. And I have heard that there has been requests by some of the farmers to have some sort of opportunity for that, that's perhaps funded by the county and supported by them. And I'm just wondering if that's even been considered, and if not, if it could be considered at some point.
It's a great question, and we do collaborate with our tenant farmers to identify new infrastructure that's needed. In fact, just a couple of months ago, we applied for some NRCS funding as well as some of the state stimulus dollars that are available to agriculture to help one of our tenants build basically a professional wash building for their fruits and vegetables. So Cassandra's been working on a project to develop some infrastructure for dry bean storage. So we have been listening to our tenants about the type of infrastructure that they need in order to be successful here in Boulder County. And so as we identify those opportunities, we're looking for outside funding to help us supplement those infrastructure needs.
Great, that's good. And then in section 4.2, talking about animal feeding operations, and certainly in other parts of the country, it's the concentrated animal feeding operations that are the big issue and the big problem. And of course, we don't have any at this point in time in Boulder County, but there is just no mention of that in that section. Is that just because we don't have any? Is it something that we should add, that it's just disallowed regardless? Seems to me having some proactive language on that might be beneficial.
I see Cassandra has her hand raised, so I will let her address that question.
Okay.
Hi, Cassandra Schnarr. I'm with the Ag Division of Parks and Open Space. So what we have added within the current policy is a link to the definition of animal feeding operations by either a state definition or a federal definition. And that has specific language about the density of the animal population that is allowed. We don't have language within the policy right now, either permitting or nor prohibiting a confined animal feeding operation. That's slightly different. Our remit for this project was just to take the 2012 policy and reword things that were confusing or unclear. So can't add for this portion of the project, can't add or change anything to the policies other than what we've been directed to do by the Board of Commissioners. So, I mean, we can make a note of like future revisions of the policy when we revisit it. Hey, if that comes up, feel free to add that in to our, our menu of things we would want to revisit in the policy.
I think that would be beneficial, and just, I guess I do have a problem with updates to any policy that are so narrowly focused to not allow new additions to it at that point. But I understand if that's the direction the commissioners have given, that's fine, but I would appreciate a note for when there is a more robust update that be at least clarified in there. I mean, it's not a problem now. I'm not anticipating there probably ever will be, but it just, again, to get out front of that, I think is a good thing.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
And then again, just another general comment is on 4.23 organic production. There's a lot of language in there about organic and assistance to move towards certification of that. But there are farmers who are basically organic in all respects, except that the cost and the process for getting that certification is difficult. And I'm just wondering what kind of support and encouragement to basically foster those values, and that stewardship to the land seems beneficial even if they do not have that certification.
That's a good point. At this point in time, Boulder County Parks and Open Space will offer discounts on rents for the first 3 years, as well as help offset the cost of certification. Right now, we don't have a mechanism for those farmers that are pursuing organic without the actual certification. And we think that the accountability piece to that, because then we, at the end of the day, we can say, yes, we spent or invested X amount of dollars and they actually received the certification.
Okay, well, I get that, the accountability, that's good, very good point, so I appreciate that. I think,
I would like to note that we have had some farmers that have indicated to us that they were going to pursue certification. We provided the discounts, we provided support, financial support, and then they chose not to pursue the certification for one reason or another. And so again, we want to make sure that there's enough of a carrot and some accountability that comes along with that carrot.
okay, that makes sense to me. The last general question I have is on the pollinator section 6.11, and whether that encourages pollinator buffer areas, you know, basically planting of areas for pollinators specifically on the buffer farms and whatnot. I didn't see anything in there clearly to describe that.
I know Cassandra's been chatting with the pollinator folks. Do you want to try to address that comment?
Yeah, sure. We, within the 2012 policy was not any kind of mechanism for pollinator buffer zones. So therefore it's not in this cleaned up language right now. That is certainly a possibility in the future that we can add some kind of pollinator buffer zone or something to future revisions of the policy itself. Right now, you know, we do have that language. It became 6.11 in the new document, recognizing the importance of pollinators and recognizing that within our design of our strategic integrated pest management program, that we will be considering the health of pollinator populations, particularly our native pollinator populations.
Right, good. Okay, and actually I forgot one that and it kind of dovetails to what you were just saying, Cassandra, and that is about in the integrated pest management, the signage section, I think it was 4.6 in the original version. You know, and again, if this is cleanup of language and you can't do it, maybe make a note for the future. One thing that's sort of a pet peeve I have is everybody's really good about putting up the signs and nobody's very good about taking them down. And so for one, it creates a lot of unsightliness. It's also very confusing. Is this, you know, actually happening now, or is it 2 months ago? So I think there should be some requirement that they take those signs down once that period is passed, that it's needed for notification.
Sure, I think that's an absolutely reasonable expectation of our staff. I admit that sometimes in agriculture, when we want to do some spraying or something, you know, we can plan on it, but the weather has to be right for it. You know, we need low wind speeds and things. So if, you know, we can plan for it on a Tuesday, but it can't happen till Friday. So sometimes that's just the nature of agriculture. And then following an application, then there's what we call a re-entry period, depending on which pesticides you're using, what you're spraying out there. There are certain label requirements about how many hours before someone can re-enter the area. So, but yes, I fully agree that after that re-entry period, we need to take down the sign so everybody knows it's clear. We're finished with that operation and it's safe to go back in the area.
Okay, great.
And Paula, I think that's something that can also be addressed through our farm operating plans, which are more at the staff department level, where it's a more of a customized document based on the farm. And so I think we could probably just be a little bit more explicit in that farm operating plan around removing signage after an application is complete.
And it is just such a commonly ignored thing. I see it everywhere. So yeah, I think it would be good to have somewhere. And then jumping to the summary recommendations, as a previous employee of government, I'm a pretty firm believer in having triggers to review. So even though there's been good track record, I think having it come up on a 5-year or a 3-year review after the GE crop is approved by the federal government is a nice step, and especially with the concerns that the citizens of Boulder County and the expectations they have, that we really be careful in this area. I think I would prefer to leave it in there as is. And that's just my comment on that. And then on the neonex section, I just feel that there might be giving a little bit too much leeway to the tenant farmer and not enough review by staff to make sure that the integrated pest management and everything is followed. So again, I'm kind of feeling like let's leave it as is.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
And that's all. I have.
Others? We have any other comments?
Yeah, Trace Baker here.
Yeah, Trace, go ahead.
Mike, thank you so much for, thank you and your staff for producing a quality product here and considering public input and county commissioner and POSAC input. And I want to take Jim's caution about wordsmithing to heart, but I do need to understand some usage here to make sure I understand how this document is going to be used. And I see the word shall and will appear, and they seem to be used interchangeably. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the concept of a guideline, do guidelines have the force of requirements, or are they simply recommendations?
Guidelines are typically recommendations, and those guidelines can be based on best management practices that either have, are commonly used within the industry or that are at the federal or state level. And it looks like Cassandra has a thought to add to that.
Sure, I was going to address both portions of your question, which the first is the use of will and shall. And if you're speaking throughout the whole document, some of that really depends on what it said in the 2012 policy, whether it said will or shall. I tried to keep that intention the same, even in the rewording. So if you're speaking throughout the whole revised 2021 edits and rewritings, that's why sometimes there's will and sometimes there is shall. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't know if that was your intent of your question.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Sure. Sorry. And then I've forgotten your second point, although I knew I had thought about it.
Yeah, defining guidelines as being requirements or recommendations.
Mm-hmm. So we changed the wording, and I think probably you're talking about the good neighbor guidelines. In the original, it made reference to having a good neighbor policy. Policy would be something that would have to be approved at the commissioner level. So we did dial that back to be good neighbor guidelines. But since it's within the cropland policy and adherence to the cropland policy is required by the lease, it really means those guidelines are going to be requirements.
Okay, thank you. And that anticipated one of my questions, so I will not ask that one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then looking at section 310, Boulder County shall consider genetically engineered trait claims, et cetera, et cetera. And then under that, the subsections beginning 3.10.1, all of these subsections are shall statements. So does that mean that all of these subsections have to be satisfied? Okay.
So okay, in the original 2012 documents, there were these subsections, and all of them said shall, except the one in the new documents 3.10.5, which is human nutrition. The wording on that one was a little funny. It doesn't say shall or will or anything. It's a kind of no verb. But if you look at 3.10, it says Boulder County shall consider these traits, and it's specifically in relation to what the trait is, what the genetically engineered trait is. So if you're planting a drought tolerant corn that's genetically engineered for drought tolerance, then you'd be looking at the conservation requirement.
Okay.
You wouldn't necessarily look at the human nutrition requirement, simply because that's not a trait claim made by the manufacturer. And all of that is requirements from the 2012 policy.
Okay, thank you very much, Cassandra. That helps. Thank you. No more
You're
questions.
welcome.
Thank you, Trace. Anybody else?
Yeah, Janet, I have a question.
Please.
First off, Mike and Cassandra, I just want to say much improved. You guys did a lot of work and it's a much more readable draft. And I really appreciate that you also had the red line version and kind of the translation version. So it made it a lot easier to go through and see what was changed. It would have been a lot more difficult that way. So my question is, and then I want to make a comment after that, going to 1.7, kind of continuing on the good neighbor discussion. And I understand the good neighbor guidelines now with the answer you gave to Trace. But on 1.7, can you give an example of how that might work? What agencies besides county extension and how they might interact with neighbors to have to resolve coexistent issues?
Sure. So this was, again, something that was in the original policy. And since we're not changing the policy, it has to stay in there. So it says that, just for everyone who can't see it, it reads, Boulder County shall work with county extension and other organizations to foster communication and coordination among growers to proactively address coexistence issues such as cross-pollination and chemical trespass. So, Boulder County Extension, or, maybe working with the NRCS, things like that, and to proactively address issues like cross-pollination or chemical trespass. I would say, and I wasn't on the, original cropland policy team that wrote the language, so I can't, so I'll speak to their intent as far as I can. You might work with, say, the NRCS or other, state agencies or something to really look at what everybody is doing and say, okay, here's when I need to spray. Does that make sense in relation to what's happening in the environment around me? A lot of, say, integrated pest management systems will take into consideration that you don't want to spray any kind of insecticide when nearby plants are flowering, because you don't want to be spraying when you've got pollinators visiting those nearby plants. So if your neighbor has a big, I don't know, alfalfa field, you don't want to be spraying when the alfalfa is flowering. Or if your neighbor has a I don't know, sunflower field, you'll want to consider that. So, working with other organizations, I think it just simply means that it's not, we don't expect you to always do this on your own. We're here to consult, and we're here to say, like, okay, here's another place where you can go for information.
And Janet, I think we wanted to leave that door open for broad input, especially if there's some new technology on the horizon, and we need to bring in some non-traditional subject matter experts to help us understand that new technology or that new approach to agriculture, that we didn't want to limit ourselves to just extension per se, that we would could partner or collaborate with other state agencies or federal agencies to make sure we've got the best available information.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
And just a comment I wanted to echo Tony's concern about the changes to the neo-nic language and removing the date that it looks like now there isn't the restriction that only those that right now have the lease agreements or the co-op agreements don't have to be approved. So I support what Tony was saying about the neo-nic language as well and the changes.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Tony Lewis. Mike or Cassandra, I'm just, I was curious. Now I've lost the language, but when you are establishing these guidelines, when we say that the county will establish these guidelines, good neighbor or others, is there a time frame associated with that?
Our goal is to establish these guidelines as quickly as we can. We want to get through the cropland policy piece first. Some of these good neighbor policies are broadly referenced in some of the farm operating plans. As an example, if a tenant's going to apply a fungicide using an airplane, I think a good neighbor, part of a good neighbor policy would be to at least notify your neighbors that you're going to do that. And so those are the kinds of guidelines that we would want to incorporate into that type of document. And then the intent would be to include those guidelines in our farm operating plans and make those guidelines available for the public if they'd wish to see them.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be helpful. And let me ask you a question on the neo-nic language. I was confused between the slide and what I'm seeing written in your document. I just want to make sure. I don't know if you can flip back to your slide on the neo-nic.
This is the language that we had posted on November 8th.
Okay. And that's what will be recommended, correct?
Actually, what staff is recommending now is a revised version of that based on some feedback that we received since that language was posted on November 8th.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you, and notwithstanding Jim Krug doesn't like to wordsmith, but I do. And I'm curious why you took out the word extreme when we're talking about justified by pest pressure. Because it seems to me that there's a lot of pest pressure out there. And if this is not extreme, then it would be very easy to say, hey, look, we got pest pressure here. We need to use neonics.
I think within that context, this is going to be, it will certainly be a conversation between ag staff and the farmer to understand what's really going on. And it may not be necessarily a pest pressure. There could be weather-related events that could result in staff potentially granting an exception on a case-by-case basis. So,
yeah, I get that, but it seems like if you have pest pressure, why would you take the word extreme out of there? I mean, I just think it's better left in.
Fair point. I also, the term extreme is also maybe undefined. And your perspective on extreme versus a farmer's perspective on extreme might be a little bit different. So I think that was also part of it.
Yeah, I get that. I guess it signals intent though, rather than signaling just pest pressure. I think you're signaling that there should be a fairly extreme case. And so while it is ill-defined, I agree, it does signal that to people, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Tony?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? As I said earlier, we're not taking, it's still open, as Mike iterated, online comments for those of you who are online. So it won't take online comments tonight on this. But at this time, we'll go to a motion. So at this time, Chair will entertain a motion on the recommendations.
So Jim, just a question here, Paula Fitzgerald, as to whether we're looking at the overall document or going to the summary slide, the things that have changed from what we reviewed in our packet. Do you want to make that two separate motions?
Oh, we could. Let's go back. Hey, Mike, can you put up the recommendations? Because that's what I was after, right? Because we're still going to go, you guys are going back to the commissioners, right? In other words, we're still taking comments. You're still working on it.
Correct. So we'll continue to take public comment and feedback through midnight on the 22nd. And so there could be some additional fine tuning based on any other public comment that we receive between now and the 22nd.
And then the commissioners are voting before our December POSAC meeting?
They are voting, yeah, the commissioners will be voting on December 7th on the final cropland policy language.
Okay. Well, let's do this, Paula. Let's start with the summary recommendations. You want to, and then I'll ask you if you want to make a motion to break it out separately, the two. Paula?
I'm sorry, I'm having microphone can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with my computer, but my screen just went blank for a second. Yeah, so I guess I move that we look at these separately. The document we reviewed and then the summary recommendations as a separate motion.
Okay. I think I got it. Let's have any discussion about that. And Stevens abstained, but for the rest, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Motion carries with Stephen abstaining. So let's go then back to the, how would you like to word it, Paula? Paula, would we call that document revisions? How about put it into a motion, if you would, please.
Okay, I guess I would like to move item, let me get the right number here, 6A, am I correct? 6A, cropland policies revision as presented in the POSAC packet. So excluding the summary revisions presented during the meeting. So we're reviewing the packet provided documents. So I move to approve as submitted in the packet.
Okay.
And when can we make amendments to that language then, Jim?
Well, once we pass it. So I'll second it, Paula, and we'll put it to a vote. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Stephen abstains, yes.
Ann Obenshane's going to abstain as well.
And Ann's gonna abstain as well. Okay. Tony, what amendment would you make to that motion?
So per my earlier comments, I would amend the language. Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me. If we could jump back in the slides to the GE crops. Let's see, forward. Forward. So the proposed, I gotta ask a question, is the proposed all of this language or is it the second half?
So the proposed language that you see on this slide is what you received in your packet in preparation for this meeting. The next slide is the revised language based on public comment that we received in the last week.
Okay, sorry to be a little.
No. I know this is be confusing. So I
appreciate
no worries.
That. So my amendment would be to change the language on this revised neonic pesticides to read tenant farmers who currently operate under a shareholder agreement with Western Sugar Cooperative, blah, blah, blah. And then secondly, my next amendment would be on the next, would be to include the language by extreme pest pressure, not pest pressure.
So Tony, point of order, do you want to make two, gonna make two motions or want it as one? In other words, you might want to make, maybe a recommendation, suggestion would be make the motion to change the language on.
Separately.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So let's start with the tenant farmers who currently operate under a shareholder agreement. I'll make that amendment.
This is
Okay.
Colin. I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? The only concern I would have there possibly would be, and maybe Mike, maybe you can chime in on this, or Cassandra, is that if a new farmer comes, maybe he comes from Nebraska, he moves here from Nebraska, and his only choice is to grow sugar beets. His only choice of vendors or contractor is Western Sugar Cooperative, so they're automatically eliminated, excluded. Is that okay?
That's my intent.
Okay, I just want to make clear. That's my only comment. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Okay, at this time, let's put the motion to vote. All those in favor of the word changing, say aye.
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 Those opposed? And Stephen is abstained from this discussion. So let the record show the motion is carried. Second one, Tony?
Second amendment I'd like to make is to reinsert the word extreme between justified by and pest pressure in the neonicotinoid pesticide revised language.
So just so I'm clear, would say it'll be subject to an evaluation of environmental, economic sustainability considerations, including but not limited to when justified by extreme pest pressures or when other pesticides will be ineffective.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion? Let's move to a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the change in that particular statement, say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Stevens abstain. Let the record show those two motions carried. Okay,
Thank you.
let's go now to, if we can, to the recommendations at the end, please, Mike. This time we'll entertain a motion on the summary recommendations.
See no one else. I'll move to not approve the summary recommendations.
Not approve of summary recommendations?
Right. My feeling is to leave it without these exceptions.
Well, it's you guys you're gonna send me to Robert's Rules of Order here tonight.
Okay.
Let's take the summary recommendations as is and see what the census is there, and then Paula, I'd ask you to make an alternative recommendation.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
So in fairness to the staff, let's go with the summary recommendations as is, and I'll ask for a motion.
Trace Baker, I move that POSAC approve the staff recommendations as presented by staff in the slide.
Jen Archuleta, second.
Okay. I'll do this just because, again, being an old man, I will have to improve my hearing, but we'll do a voice vote on this one. So I'll just call it out. Jen Archuleta.
Aye.
Paula.
No.
Stephen, abstain. Trace,
No,
Ann,
Abstain.
abstain. Tony, Tony, you there?
No.
Janet George,
Aye.
Heather Williams,
Aye.
Jim Krug, I'll do aye. So we have, the ayes are 1, 2, 3. The ayes are 5 and the nays are 2, 3, and 1 abstention, 2 abstention, 1 abstention. Did I get that right? Stevens, right? And 1 abstention.
Two
So
abstentions.
2 abstentions. Ann, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got that right. And 2 abstentions. So the motion carries. Okay. All right. Paula, since that motion carried, we'll go with that if that's okay with you. Do you have any other comment?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for that. And I did pull out Robert's rules. Hey, the next item of business is the Parks and Open Space Capital and Stewardship Project funding. And we have Tina with us tonight. Tina, are you there?
I am here.
Are you ready to go?
I am, unless you want to take a quick break.
I'll ask the group. Group, how we doing? You okay? Want to keep going?
keep going.
Good. I see head shaking. Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Tina. We're on a roll.
Okay, great. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. This is a recorded presentation, and we have myself and a few other staff are present to answer questions. We don't have all the presenters here tonight, but at the end, any questions that you have, I'm sure we'll hopefully be able to answer. So without further ado, I'm going to start the recording, and at the end, we'll be back live with you. Hello, I'm Tina Nielsen, Special Projects, and I'm here tonight to present the proposed 2022 capital and stewardship projects and ask for your recommendation to the county commissioners. The capital and stewardship project selection starts with the department's internal strategic plan. Each work group prioritizes projects for the upcoming year based on their goals and objectives. And for projects that need funding, the project lead creates a project charter. The project charter documents the scope and timing of the project and demonstrates its readiness for spending the money and its alignment with strategic priorities. Once the project charters are submitted, the management team ranks them, and those that fall above the line receive funding. This year, a total of 32 project charters were submitted, totaling $1.75 million. Of those, 23 projects were selected to receive funding. This slide shows the ranking criteria. The first 4 are the department's 2025 strategic focus: cultural relevance and inclusion, resilience, maintenance backlog, and safety. We'll be coming back to you early next year with more about our 2025 strategic focus. So I'm not going to get into much detail here. Then the other criteria that figure into the ranking are also listed on this page. And here we have a snapshot of funding for 2022 capital and stewardship projects. As you can see, just over $1 million is going to capital projects and about $500,000 to stewardship projects for a total of just over $1.5 million. And next, we'll look at project details for each division, starting with agriculture. The Ag Resources Division received funding for 6 projects, 4 capital projects and 2 stewardship projects. With grants and contributions from operating budgets, Their total comes to nearly $525,000. The Ag Division is also seeking additional funding from the federal stimulus program. On this map, you can see the geographic location of the 2022 Ag and Water projects. And now Jason Sauer and Audrey Butler will provide more details about these projects.
Good evening. My name is Jason Sauer with Boulder County Parks and Open Space. I am a project coordinator for the Ag Division. First project I will be speaking about is the Hygiene Dairy Produce Handling and Washing Facility. The National Food Safety Act requires that our smaller scale vegetable producers upgrade their process to ensure food consumed by the public is safe to eat. This project will help Boulder County invest on our properties to meet those standards, increase efficiencies, improve public safety, all while being more sustainable. The proposed building is 40 by 100 feet, located on the Hygiene Dairy property occupied by Red Wagon Farms. This is a 2-year project, with design and engineering being completed this year in 2021. The project scope is to build a steel building with power and water so the tenant can operate newly purchased produce processing equipment. The building will include a ADA compliant bathroom, space for walk-in coolers, and a hand washing area for employees. The current tenant will rent the new building from Boulder County Parks and Open Space for approximately $10,000 per year to help recoup the cost of constructing this facility. Next project is the Erdl Center Pivot. The Erdl property is leased by Keith Bateman. He grows wheat, barley, and hay. The goal is to eliminate flood irrigation by installing the third and final new center pivot in 2022. Center pivots are much more efficient to install, maintain, and operate than flood irrigation, improving water use efficiency to 98% compared to 40% for flood irrigation. Irrigating with the flood method can cause waterlogging, which can increase soil salinity, an effect that can reduce crop yields and land value. These improvements help to ensure water is not wasted and can help improve soil health and crop yields. In addition to the NRCS grant awarded to the tenant, Boulder County has applied for 2 sources of grant funding to offset the costs. Next project is the Imel and Loggerman Ag Land Rehab. The irrigated fields at the Loggerman Agricultural Preserve and neighboring Imel property are leased for livestock and forage production, primarily perennial grass and alfalfa. Over the last several years, the county has completed the removal of prairie dogs from cropland on these properties in accordance with the prairie dog element of the grassland management policy. The project goal is to return the agricultural land to a productive state following long-term occupation of prairie dogs. Rehabilitation back to former/full productivity will require herbicide application for weed control, leveling burrows, soil prep, and seeding. Focus of efforts will be 230 acres on Imel and 109 acres on Loggerman. Final project is agricultural fences. Through many years of acquiring open space properties and continual aging of fencing infrastructure over time, the county has developed a backlog of agricultural fences in need of reconstruction. Fencing is mandatory for the continued functionality of our agricultural landscapes and provides safety in the interfaces between agricultural management and external factors. In 2021, Ag Resources was awarded stewardship funding for the fence infrastructure projects on 7 open space properties. The project focus for 2022 will be for 6 additional properties: Cushman Southwest Fence, Cushman Southeast Fence, AHI Longmont Farms East, Lower Perimeter, Gage Middle Division, and Madison Perimeter. The work will be completed by a contractor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Audrey Butler. I'm the Water Resource Program Supervisor at Parks and Open Space. Our group manages the water rights assets and the associated infrastructure on Parks and Open Space property. Water Resources is proposing to implement 2 well improvement projects on Rock Creek Farm and Brewbaker Sorensen this upcoming year. The wells on these properties need to be rehabilitated and redeveloped to become functioning legal wells compliant with state regulation. These projects combine several components, one of which is resiliency. It provides resiliency for the streams by removing livestock from the streams, and it also provides a redundant source of water for these livestock. In addition, it addresses the maintenance backlog that we have with respect to the groundwater resources on parks and open space, and is part of a larger effort that we have going on to redevelop wells to improve livestock watering and riparian corridor health. So the second project that Water Resources has on tap for 2022 is a water efficiency and conveyance project. The goal of this project is to improve dam safety and water use efficiency at Gaynor Lake and the Howell Ditch on the Wittermeyer property. Both of these open ditches, as you can see here in this picture, are choked by cattails. This prevents the proper conveyance of water and reduces the use of the water that's going through. In addition, at this location at Gaynor Lake, it impacts dam safety. The water you can see in the lower part of the picture is backed up, and that's potentially going to inundate the toe of that dam, which prevents the long-term safety goals of being met as set forth by the state of Colorado. So this project combines both resiliency in terms of improving the water use efficiency and the long-term viability of our farms, and also a safety component at Gaynor Lake by preventing dam safety violations from taking place and ultimately impacting public safety.
And now moving to the Recreation and Facilities Division, which received funding for 11 projects, 7 capital projects, and 4 stewardship projects for a total of about $1.4 million. This includes grants and partnership funds for the Colton Trail improvements and the Toland Ranch Trail construction, which is completely funded with grants. This figure does not include partner contributions already accrued to the Rock Creek Trail. And here on this map, you can see the geographic location of the recreation and facilities projects. And now Mary Olson and Carol Beam will provide more details about these projects.
Hello, POSAC. This is Mary Olson. I'm a landscape architect. I will be presenting the recreation and facilities projects for 2022. Our first project is the 104th Street Trail Connector. This trail will link the Cole and Rock Creek Regional Trail systems along 104th Street, aptly. Our project partners, the cities of Louisville and Lafayette, have wanted this connection for many, many years, and we now have funding through Dr. Cog's TIP program, the Transportation Improvement Program. The 2.6-mile trail will be constructed along 104th on open space land or within the road right-of-way, and it would run from Empire Road, the Coal Creek connection at Empire Road, down to Stearns Lake to the south. Unfortunately, escalating costs have been a huge issue for this project. Both design and construction costs have skyrocketed. So we are considering phasing the project at this point, and we are currently consulting with the Board of County Commissioners on that. Our partners would like to build phase 1 in 2022, and that would be 1.7 miles of trail from the north. And then we would have to find other funding options for phase 2, which I'm realizing is kind of behind my head. That green section would be phase 2 for the full connection to Stearns Lake. We'd have to find that funding in the future. The project does fulfill our commitment to serve our community requests, and it addresses our strategic priority of safety, and it will provide an off-road experience for trail users and commuters between the 2 regional trail systems. The next recreation facilities project is the Colton Trail Improvement Project. A portion of the Colton Trail has been designated as part of the Rocky Mountain Greenway system, and it needs to be upgraded to meet the standards for that trail system. The Colton Trail was originally part of Boulder County's Road 67 and was partially vacated in the late 1990s and converted to a trail. Most of the trail works really well. It's 2.7 miles long and approximately 8 feet wide, but there is one very steep section that does not meet ADA standards or the standards for the Rocky Mountain Greenway. This steep section provides a challenge for trail visitors and often erodes, resulting in high maintenance cost. We have submitted a CPW grant for upgrading the trail, and if that is awarded, we will construct the project. Our POSAC commitment for 2022 will cover the cost of conducting a cultural resources survey for the proposed trail corridor, which we need to have completed before construction can begin. Our next project is the Sign Standards and Messaging Manual. We recently hired a consultant to create this manual for our parks, trails, and open space lands. We want to upgrade our signage and adopt the use of international symbols and icons to communicate many of our messages, and we want to continue our crisp goal of developing effective communication with the Latinx community. The consultant will provide recommendations on the wide variety of signs we post on open space properties and was just recently awarded to the design firm Meeksenar, who created the wayfinding signage at DIA. We are really excited to have them on board, along with their local sub-consultant, Marina Lagrave. The project will fulfill two strategic priorities, both cultural relevance by translating appropriate signs into Spanish and adopting universal icons, and safety. The project will improve safety by providing clear, streamlined signage and messaging for all open space users. Our next project is the Tolan Ranch Trail. As many of you know, in 2015, Boulder County partnered with Colorado State Forest Service, Great Outdoors Colorado, and the Conservation Fund to acquire a conservation easement over about 3,000 acres of the Tolan Ranch property near Eldora. The acquisition included a 6.5-mile trail easement to connect the West Mag Trail system on the east side to Jenny Creek. We were awarded a GoCo Trail construction grant of $350,000 last year, and a contractor began construction this past summer. And that was phase 1 of the project. Phase 2 should be completed next summer by the contractor, and then Parks and Open Space staff will finalize trail work and signage in the following seasons. The project will increase trail connectivity by adding 6 miles of trail connecting users to the Continental Divide and beyond. Our next project is the Twin Lakes Bank Stabilization Project. Twin Lakes, the West Lake of Twin Lakes has been devastated by overuse from dogs and humans, with severe erosion along the shores of the entire West Lake. The widening and eroding trail system is damaging tree roots along the north edge of the property, and the loss of soil along the entire shoreline has created multiple safety issues. Staff will address these issues by stabilizing all the eroded banks with soil riprap and erosion control blanketing, and then public access points will be improved and formalized so that dangerous areas can be completely shut off with fencing, and we can control access a little bit more along the lake. The project will address our maintenance backlog and safety issues. Our next project is expanding parking at Hile Valley Ranch. The Cowwood Fire has given us an opportunity to reevaluate the parking in the main lot, where we hope to add a few spaces and where we will install stone curbing throughout that main lot. As you know, the pandemic accentuated trends of increased visitor use, and Hile was no stranger to that trend. So we hope to also increase capacity by designing and constructing a new lot on the south end of the property near Left Hand Canyon Road. We'd like to add 20 spaces if we can. And of course, expansion of parking will mitigate law enforcement activities and issues, along with the maintenance issues that come with illegal overflow parking. Next up, we have Castle Rock climbing improvements. The Boulder climbing community and Front Range climbing stewards have been working on climbing access near Castle Rock for the past 3 summer seasons. Currently, there are a lot of social trails in the area that are not sustainable. So the goal of this project is to consolidate and harden the trail system to allow more sustainable access to climbing routes. This would be the final phase of the project. Front Range climbing stewards are making improvements to this area and have engaged numerous volunteers, and the Boulder climbing community has funded several weeks of work for this project. So this is a partnership we want to keep going. It engages volunteers, consolidates use in the area, and restores areas that have been impacted negatively. The next project is the Lobo Trail Resurfacing Project. Portions of this trail that connects Longmont to Boulder were constructed about 20 years ago and have received minimal maintenance over that time. We get many reports of the trail being below grade, with water ponding issues in numerous locations after it rains. Resurfacing a couple sections of the trail next year will bring the trail back up to our standards and will minimize the water ponding and the freezing that can happen after precipitation. 3 sections are slated to be resurfaced. The Cottontail Trail from North 71st Street to the City of Boulder's Cottontail Trail, a stretch at 79th Street to Niwot Road, and then a section from 63rd Street, the 63rd Street underpass, to the Twin Lakes Dog Park area. The final recreation and facilities project for 2022 will be to continue safety tree pruning. The Lobo Trail system in Gun Barrel contains numerous mature trees that line both the trail and private property. So we will secure a contractor to assist with tree removal and mitigation work in this area. This is another project that addresses both maintenance and safety issues. Thank you.
Good evening, POSAC. This is Carol Beam, Cultural Resource Specialist, to present the 2 historic preservation projects for 2022. Both projects address the department's maintenance backlog and support our safety initiatives. Finally, both projects happen to occur on 2 of our most historic barns. The top priority for 2022 is the Walker Ranch Hay Barn Re-Roof project. The barn is a highly visible historic building on the property and believed to have been constructed between 1890 and 1930. The wood shingles have been failing for the past several years and cannot wait another year before causing serious structural damage to the barn. The project will replace the deteriorating wood shingles and be completed by our own Buildings and Historic Preservation Work Group. The second priority project is the McIntosh Barn Foundation Stabilization Project. This 1881 barn is a highly visible historic building on the Agricultural Heritage Center. Earlier this year, it was discovered that the southwest stone foundation is bulging due to moisture infiltration and presents a large safety hazard. This project was unexpected and requires immediate attention. The project will focus on completing the mitigation work outlined in the structural engineer's construction documents and be completed by an outside construction contractor. This completes the 2022 historic preservation projects. Thank you.
And now moving on to the Resource Management Division, which encompasses the ecosystems and public education categories of our capital budget, which we also refer to as the Parks and Open Space Improvement Projects, or POSIP. They received nearly $692,000 divided between 5 capital projects and 2 stewardship projects. And this funding is leveraged with grants and operational budget contributions of about $296,000. And in this map, you can see the geographic locations of the resource management projects. And now I'm going to turn it over to Stefan Reinold and David Hurt for more details about these projects.
Hi, my name is Stefan Reinold. I am the Senior Forestry Resource Specialist, and I'm going to talk to you about our Caribou Sherwood Gulch Forestry Project. We have $102,500 earmarked from the 2022 POSIP fund. It's a 2-year project across 100 acres, and we hope to have it under contract in the next few weeks. We did award the bid to Summit Forestry. This project is going to reduce overstory density while promoting a shift towards a ponderosa pine forest. We want to create a mosaic of forest structure, which means we're going to have individual trees here and clumps there and openings as well. We want to have a diversity of age class, size class, and species on the landscape. We are going to utilize some funding from the State Fire Assistance WUI grant, which was awarded in 2019. And this project is going to actually also produce biomass that we will use in our biomass heating facilities at the OSTC complex and at the Boulder County Jail. Our second project is the St. Vrain Forestry Yard, and we are asking for a little over $85,000 from POSIP funding. In 2013, we had a storage location known as our Alaska Yard, and during the flood, a lot of logs went down Main Street in Longmont, and Longmont no longer wanted us to store logs there. And we've been struggling to have locations to store this material so we could process it easier for our biomass facilities. So this St. Vrain Forestry Yard will alleviate that problem. The project involves building access and a road into the site, some visual screen plantings, and also looking into putting sound barriers to minimize the impact to others. This is still in the land use process, and we hope to have it approved in early 2022. Thanks.
Good evening, POSAC. David Hurt, Senior Plant Ecologist, and I'm going to present 4 projects in both POSIP and stewardship funds that fall under the umbrella of the ecosystems group. Each of these has its own work group as a champion, and nearly all of these address a backlog of maintenance issues and resilience of our ecosystems and wildlife in the face of a changing climate. The first project is to control cheatgrass on 350 acres of Hall Ranch, just west of the town limits of Lyons. This would be an aerial application of Rejuvra, previously known as Esplanade, that POS has been using for years now, with dramatic results in controlling non-native annual grasses and other weeds. In areas we've used Rejuvra, we've seen an increase in perennial native flowers and a subsequent increase in pollinator use. It's also dramatically released shrubs, allowing them to put on much more seasonal growth and increasing the available browse for wildlife. And it also reduces the thatch and fine fuels that cheatgrass provides, thereby potentially reducing the spread of wildfire near an urban interface. And it also addresses our strategic focus on safety as well as those other targets I mentioned earlier. The second project actually encompasses two projects, both recent post-flood stream projects on St. Vrain Creek that restored sections of the stream itself while constructing new and improved water diversion structures. These structures allow not only for more efficient water delivery to users, they also allow for fish passage for our native warm water fishes, many of which are species of special concern. There's been a lot of players in these projects, a lot of different stakeholders, and we realize streams are dynamic systems and can change dramatically in a single large flow event. So this funding enables us to have some dedicated money to allow for adaptive management to ensure that these unique projects continue to function in future years beyond any construction warranties, both for the water users and for the fish. The Bush Pond project is a wildlife-focused project that seeks to improve habitat for the northern leopard frog, another species of special concern within the county comprehensive plan and a tier 1 species with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. The bush properties along Marshall Road between Cherryvale and Superior. This pond's, I think it's visible right from the road. This is a collaborative project with OSMP. Populations of northern leopard frog have been declining, and this area represents a good opportunity to increase available habitat, especially in light of a changing climate. The Bush Pond is adjacent to a population of frogs on OSMP lands just downstream, and our hope is by improving this pond, primarily by reducing the presence of cattails, that the frogs can colonize this new habitat and utilize the connectivity between the two areas. The final project is the Prescott Wetland, which lies north of Peaceful Valley and south of Allens Park along Bunt School Road. This is a significant wetland in both its size and its diversity of plants. Parts of it are classified as a fen, which is a groundwater-fed wetland with deep organic peat soils. To be classified as such requires at least 16 inches of organic soils, and research has shown it can take 1,000 years to build 8 inches of soils in the saturated conditions. Hence, fens are sometimes considered old-growth wetlands. Unfortunately, this wetland was ditched in the past, as you can see in that upper right photo, which has led to a lowered water table and a change in plant communities. This project seeks to contract out a design and the construction to restore that hydrology of the site and to protect against future climate change and preserve a large carbon sink. And we are also pursuing additional grant opportunities to help with this funding. Additionally, this wetland is adjacent to Forest Service roads that see significant OHV use from individuals and rental agencies out of Estes Park, and the boundary fences are in need of repair and a replacement. It wouldn't take much for a single OHV user to trespass and cause significant resource damage to the site. So we want to be proactive in preventing that. And those are the 4 projects we have in the ecosystems group. Thanks for your time.
Hi, it's Tina Nielsen again. I'm filling in for Pascal Freed, who leads the public education category of the capital budget, and she's on medical leave right now. This project will fund a consultant to develop long-range interpretive guidelines for our Agricultural Heritage Center, Nettleton Mining Museum, and the Assay Office. These plans will update the educational themes to better reflect a more inclusive human history in Boulder County using culturally relevant language. The plans will also assess and update programs, signage, and training materials. The goal is to complete the planning documents by the end of 2022 and begin implementation in 2023. A second phase of plans will be developed for Walker Ranch, Homestead, Altona School, and the Cardinal Mill Museum in future years. So that brings us to the end of our presentation, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Hey, Tina, Jim Krug, not a question, just a comment, and then I'll throw it to the other POSAC members. But, you know, I was sitting here thinking that if somebody said to me, a neighbor or a friend, you know, hey, what am I getting out of my sales tax? You know, what am I getting? And I see all that, and maybe this is more directed towards V if she's still listening. And that is, to me, some kind of, I don't know, daily camera insert where, just like you did with all of your categories, just something like that with bullet points of what's being done. Because the other day when I sat down and started just reading through the agenda items for tonight, I thought, well, I shouldn't say that, but I was like, holy cow, an awful lot of stuff, some in my own backyard I wasn't maybe sort of aware of, but not fully. And how many people have as much access to me to some of the information. So I would just encourage you, it's good stuff. I don't have any questions other than to say, I'd like to see it more in the public eye somehow, in the press or a poster or something, so you get credit for it. More, I should say, more credit for it maybe than what you already do. So with that, I'll throw it out to POSAC members. Questions?
Jen Archuleta, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you, Tina. I love this every year. It is one of my favorite things to see and observe, and just all the great work you guys do. So thank you so much for giving this to us.
Other questions?
I just have a comment, just kind of on the heels of what Jen said. Thank you. I always look forward to this presentation at the end of the year. It's really great to see what's going on in these upcoming projects, and I'm always so excited to see them. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I will jump in just to say, join in those comments. And being a neighbor to Lagerman Imel, I'm very happy to see the work that's planned for that, because it's really in need of some help. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. Oh,
I'll
sorry.
pile on as well, and then also just have a question about the roof material for the historic barns. And you know, there's been some space given by the Preservation Society to use other materials other than cedar for some of our historic buildings. And I was just curious if those materials had been considered, or if there was a cost that it was cost prohibitive.
I am not going to be able to answer that question, Anne. I'm sorry. And Carol Beam is not here with us. What I can tell you is that the shingles were replaced a few years ago, and the way the project was spec'd out, they didn't use the correct nails, so the nails rusted, and that's the reason why these shingles are blowing off. I think they're reusing the shingles as much as they can that they've been able to find. So it's not a question of replacing all of them, but I can certainly check with Carol, and we can let you know offline.
Thanks, I'd be curious.
I like Ann. I have to comment. It's nice to ask a question about a barn with a barn in the background.
Right?
Your timing, that's pretty good. We haven't seen that yet. We're gonna have to match what we're talking about. Okay. Any other questions for Tina?
I have a couple questions. One is on the Gaynard Lake project. Will any of those improvements help the smell issue that we've heard several times from the public?
That is a good question. And Audrey was planning to join us tonight, but I don't see her here on the panel. Mike Foster might know, and Jeff, looks like Jeff is raising his hand. So Jeff, go ahead.
Hello, greetings everyone. Jeff Moline, resource planning staff. So what were the improvement that Audrey spoke about is actually on Gaynard Lake, and the odor issue is actually from Little Gaynard Lake, which is just a little across the street. So as much as we would hope that these improvements would make a difference to that, they're likely not going to make a difference to that. And just so you know, we're working with the neighborhood on the Little Gainer issue still. So.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Jeff.
You bet.
And another question is, I know you're working on an ADA assessment right now as well, and I'm just wanting to make sure, and I'm sure you are, but just talking about that you're going to work cooperatively with the improvements so that you're not doing something that then has to be redone in the future when ADA improvements are made.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a timing issue there, and I just, yeah.
Right. And just to speak a little bit to that, generally, not specifically about the ADA assessment itself. I know you had a presentation on that in a recent hearing. I don't remember if it was last month or 2 months ago or whatever, but, you know, first of all, thank you for the kind comments. And second of all, the credit goes to all the staff who are out there doing all this hard work. I'm just pushing the paper and showing the pretty pictures. So it's always an honor to do this presentation. And one of the things, this process has evolved over time. And one of the things that we've really tried to do through the use of our project charters, which were mentioned in the presentation, is to really create a culture of collaboration and consultation so that we don't have these timing issues and, you know, step on each other's toes as we're out there doing the work. So the project charter is really designed to make sure that those consultations are taking place in a timely manner, and that everybody who needs to be in the know is involved in the conversations. So that was a good opportunity, Paula, to further explain that. Thank you.
Great. Well, and thanks for including the Lobo improvements. I've noticed some of those problems of low areas, as well as goat heads, which I presume are just an ongoing things that you're dealing with. But like others have said, I appreciate putting these all on the list and getting funding for them, and be great to see the improvements.
Okay, thank you. At this time, anybody else? At this time, Chair will entertain a motion to recommendations on the capital and stewardship project funding for 2022.
And Open Chain, I'll make a motion to approve. I don't have the language in front of me, to approve the funding recommendations for 2022.
Is there a second? Thank you, Ann. Is there a second?
Jen Archuleta, second.
I'll second.
Thank you. We got two tonight. Thank you for that. Do we have any online comments, Nick? All right, thank you, Nick. So being no comments at this time, we'll accept the motion. Will any further discussion from staff? Okay. Committee, at this time, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Any abstentions? Let the record show the motion's approved. Thank you, Tina, for coming out tonight. Please, tomorrow or Monday, thank all the staff for the video and their input. And you do a little more, Tina, I think, than push papers and show pretty pictures.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. All right. And now the grand finale of the evening, I think, is the director's update.
Yes.
And is Therese in the house?
Reese is in the house.
All righty. Have at it.
Good evening, POSAC. I know it's a long meeting. We appreciate your time and attention. And I would like to share two pictures with you. This one right here is from the Outdoor Creations plein air art exhibit that we had the grand opening for last Friday night at the Great Frame Up in Longmont. This is the grand prize winner, and it is called the Ron Stewart Award for Excellence. And the winning painter was Mr. Harding. So it is still up. This exhibit is still ongoing. You too, if you did not have a chance to make it out there and see it, you can go see this exhibit at the Great Frame Up till the end of the year. So this is just one of many, 94, as a matter of fact, beautiful paintings that you can see. Then this, can you see this picture? You're still seeing the.
We still got the first one.
Hang on. New share. So this kind of ties together the topics about the cedar shingles and the roof and historic preservation. So this is at our Brawley property, and many of you were on the field trip there a year and a half ago or so, where we went out and saw the Brawley barn behind the roof here. And this is the fireman's hat that our Parks and Open Space Improvement Project, our POSAC project this year funded. So this is the recreation of the fireman's hat. Now this is going to go on one of those two silos that you see behind it. So we just thought that this is such a fabulous project, and when it gets up on top of the silos, it's going to be a great thing for the county to see as you drive down 63rd Street. So I will stop sharing, and the other updates that I have for you include, so we have just opened our research, our request for research proposals. These are small research grants that we give out to individuals, graduate students, sometimes, private companies to conduct research on open space. We give up to $10,000 for each project. And if you or any of your friends or research colleagues are interested, the proposals are due by January 10th. So you've got some time. We have exciting news as well. We have hired Lucero Torres. She has accepted the position for Senior Park Ranger. It's the position that Jason Vroman, who I think has presented to you several times in the past, recently left. Lucero comes to us from Cherry Creek State Park, where she served as a commissioned park ranger and supervised over 20 seasonals. She's fluent in both English and Spanish, and she is really looking forward to helping us implement our CRISP plan. And I believe, Trace, you might have asked this last time, whether we required a Spanish speaker. We had a Spanish speaker preferred, and lo and behold, we have one. So we are very excited to welcome Lucero. She starts on December 6th. Our weed group will be completing an aerial application of Rejuvra, the same chemical that David Hurt talked about in his presentation. The application is going to be on Ron Stewart Preserve at Rabbit Mountain and on Indian Mountain, and it is targeting cheatgrass. And as David said, it will help with the fire risk that comes with too much cheatgrass. And when we apply it, we just have an amazing rebound of native vegetation and native pollinators that go along with it. That could happen as early as next week. So that's good news on our part. This is the perfect time of year to apply it because the vegetation isn't growing, and it really just targets the cheatgrass. Our Red Hill elk management program has ended for the season. We had 33 hunters. They were able to harvest 10 elk and move the elk around. So the elk are no longer just sitting right on our properties. We are not yet at our target for that Red Hill herd. So we'll be bringing that back to you in the course of the next couple of months because it was just approved for 2 years. So watch for that in January or February. The Ron Stewart Preserve at Rabbit Mountain elk management is ongoing, and that will still continue through the end of January this year, 2022. Our plant ecology working group is working with the contractor, and actually it already happened. My understanding is the contractor got out there Tuesday and Wednesday and removed 600 non-native trees along the St. Vrain River on the Bullock property. So those of you that live in Lyons, it's just before you enter into Lyons. And so you may see that the St. Vrain was opened up a little bit there. These were all non-natives, including locust and elm and crack willow. So that's, again, helping with our whole flood restoration up in the St. Vrain corridor there between Longmont and Lyons. And we're really looking forward to just improved riparian habitat. Our foresters completed 25 acres of a prescribed fire at Hall Ranch last week. Most of that was just black lining, which is really burning a strip around the outside of a target area. The target area is several hundred acres. And we do it in conjunction with our sheriff's office fire crew. And we successfully burned those 25 acres. So we are prepared to do more if the conditions align up there. We still have our left-hand outdoor challenge. These are the teens group that work throughout the school year. They do both in class and outdoor activities. We engaged them to go up to Hall Ranch where they stacked cords of firewood, and that firewood is going to be provided to the American Indian Veterans Group that is using Indian Mountain for their sweat lodges. So again, this is just a wonderful, and the Native American vets came out and spoke to the Left Hand Outdoor Challenge. So this is just a great connection between the teens that we are engaging in resource management and the Native American vets group that is able to use Indian Mountain for their ceremonies. So wonderful connection. And then we would like to propose, I don't know that this needs any official approval, but just in the vein of trying to streamline the presentations to POSAC and give you, the good meaty fun stuff like Tina and the other staff all presented and the cropland policy, we would like to propose that for standard real estate dispositions, such as where there's an entity that has condemnation authority, similar to the ones that we just saw earlier in the meeting, where it's an acre or two along the right of way, that we would propose to put these on a consent list, a consent items list for POSAC, where you would get the written material, you would be able to read through it. If you had questions and wanted more information, you could ask to call it up, but it may streamline our processes and the time that you spent looking at these, basically these real estate transactions that we really don't have a whole lot of yay or nay say in them. If you have any other questions about how we might propose to do that, Janice Wisman is on the call here. Does anyone have any questions about that? The county commissioners do it. There are other advisory committees that have a consent agenda items. Conrad's also here if anyone had any questions.
Teresa, I think that sounds like a great idea. Consent agenda is an easy way of doing it, and anybody can pull some out if they need. So I'm totally in favor.
Yeah, I agree, Teresa. What we do in Georgia is we get a list like this time of year, and it says in 2022, here's all the things that the staff's going to pursue, and here's the locations, all the backup data. And, do you have any questions about this now? And then you sort of cut them loose through the year and you don't have to. Anyway, yes. Yes, I think it's a good idea.
Great. What I think that you may hear, I think our concern is that we often don't know this stuff a year in advance. Yeah. But certainly something that we can consider any projects like this that we know are coming, we could give you an early heads up and then have it on a consent agenda item as it gets closer.
So this is Janice Wisman. If I could jump in, I'm not sure that we can do that because we never know the details until we're actually ready to bring it to you. So, and we don't know the timing because projects timing changes constantly throughout. So I would be afraid of giving you information that then becomes incorrect if we gave you a list ahead of time.
Okay.
And then,
Teresa, do you want some other questions from anybody? I'm sorry, are you done? I have
one other update, right. unless there are any other questions about this consent agenda proposal.
No.
Teresa, I have one question. There was another reason you wanted to do the consent agenda. Do you now not want to talk about that reason?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the other idea was that, and the reason for doing this would be to simplify your meetings a bit to allow more time for the more meaty topics.
Yeah.
And there may also be a relatively minor acquisition proposal that we would bring to you. And perhaps we could put and test that out, the idea of putting something like that on the consent agenda as well. And then if staff had felt like it was a minor acquisition, but you wanted to discuss it, or a member of the public wanted to discuss it, could be called up for discussion in a brief presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Janice. Now, Therese?
Yeah, so the final thing is we've set the date for your retreat. So we did a survey, Renata did a survey, reached out to you, and we have landed on February 5th. It's a Saturday, and we'll have it at the Goodhue Farmhouse. So mark your calendars as save the date.
Super. Okay. Any questions? Now, any other questions for Therese? No. I'm going to bang the fist gavel. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good Thanksgiving. Be safe.